Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you all for tuning in. We're downtown live at our studio. This is Talk Visual 305. I have my co-host, Mr. Julio Guzman here. First and foremost, guys, I want to say thank you guys for liking and subscribing. Please take the opportunity to help us leave some crumbs for the next generation by liking and subscribing. That goes a long way for us. But most importantly, we wanted to bring some what do we want to bring, Julio? Some great energy to the team today. And we wanted to make sure you know that everyone that's out there that's listening, we have a very special guest that we wanted to introduce you guys to today. But before I do, I'm going to let my right hand do it. Julio, what do you got?
All right, here we go. We've got a really special guest in the building today. He is a friend of mine. He is a father. He is an attorney. He is also the CEO of FarmShare. And he's also the current chairman of the National Parks Association, the Everglades, Biscayne, and the Dry Tortugas National Parks, and Big Cypress Preserve. It is the one and only former mayor, former councilman, Stephen Shelley.
So good morning, sir. Good morning and welcome.
Morning. Thank you guys for having me on the show here. I'm excited to have some conversations.
Very good, sir. Thank you. We typically bring our special guests on to give them their flowers and wanted to say thank you for all the things you have previously done. Thank you for the things you're currently doing, and thank you for the things that you will do in the future as we follow your path. Okay. So thank you. So good morning to you and welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
He's got an interesting story.
I know.
He's done a lot of really cool things in his life. And throughout his life, I've watched him, and he is a role model for what a lot of us men want to be. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about how you started in Homestead, because I know you were away for a while. You met your wife. She kind of pulled you down here.
Yes. and ported me into the area.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I met my wife at University of Florida, so I'm born and raised over there. And
U, baby.
Go Gators.
That's it.
But anyways, I did some of my law school at UM though, so I'm secondarily a Cane.
You're a tweener.
But yeah, but first and foremost a Gator. But so I met my wife at the University of Florida, born and raised in the Tampa area. Went up to the University of Florida, met her my last year of school there. She was born and raised here in Homestead. Her family's farmed for, I guess, 5 generations now. Right. Came down here in the 30s and 40s and did farming. So while I was going to law school, she came back here, graduated from school, came back to Homestead. I was going to law school, and I was actually driving from Orlando, which is where I'm going to law school, down here to Homestead every weekend.
Right.
For almost a year and a half before I again transferred to UM. But
from Tampa?
No, I was in Orlando.
Whoa.
In Orlando. So I was actually spending more time in Homestead when I was in law school than I was in Orlando, just because I'd leave on a Thursday, come back on a Monday. But ultimately, I fell in love with the community. The right. Fishing, the outdoorsmen, areas, the national parks nearby. You've got, I loved the community at the time. It reminded me of where my family was up in North Georgia. I have extended family up there.
Right.
And that rural feel, but I was right near Miami. I could go downtown Miami and get anything and everything I wanted, access to all the stores. So that's what kind of made me fall in love and led me to kind of say, I'm going to put my roots down here and make this my home.
Very good.
So considering all of the other places, let's say she wasn't from Homestead, what were you thinking about doing prior to meeting your girl? Were you thinking, I'm going to go to Texas, I'm going to go to New York, I'm going to go build this huge law practice somewhere? What were you thinking at that time?
I always had this idea that I was going to go move out west. I used to go when I was younger, we'd go out there and go skiing, and I loved it out west. That was where I wanted to set up shop. I wanted to graduate and move out west. And so that was kind of what I was thinking of doing until I met her, and obviously my whole path changed. Although now that I've been in Florida long enough, I don't know that I want to go anywhere that it's cold. I used to love the cold weather, and now that first cold front comes through, and I'm just like, this isn't for me.
No. Get in, get out, right?
Yeah. I like to visit it. I don't mind visiting it. Don't get me wrong. I like to visit cold weather, but I don't think I want to live in it. So,
so throughout your journey, obviously you wear many hats, and what was the most rewarding for you that you feel?
Well, that's
other than being a father.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a tough one. Obviously, being a father is probably my number one priority. Something that I've enjoyed the most, spending time with him, shaping him, teaching him, passing on my knowledge. But secondarily to that, I think it's my current role as CEO of FarmShare. I'm impacting the lives of millions of people on a daily and annualized basis. I'm giving them life-sustaining food. I'm helping keep them alive. So I think that's very rewarding, but I think also my time with the city of Homestead was also very rewarding because I was able to kind of help shape the policy, impact a ton of people. And ultimately being part of the city of Homestead is what led me to being part of FarmShare, was that development of my passion to help people and leave behind a legacy. So I think, those three things are the things that I think I'm most proud of, or I'd enjoyed the most.
Right.
And I think helped me leave an impact, or have made impact so far, in the community.
Right. So
His legacy is definitely stamped.
definitely.
Inside the city of Homestead. And it was during a really challenging time.
Right.
There was a lot of transition. There was a lot of controversy. There was a lot of things going on. But you seemed steadfast in your approach.
And focus.
And it was very common sense oriented. And I always felt like you were always thinking, okay, what's best for the city?
Right.
What can we do to move this city forward, even if it's just an inch, because of all of the controversy that might be in front of us at the moment. Was that your approach?
I was always trying to be very fair. I always tried to look at things and make decisions and decisions that could be repeatable in the future. If I made a decision today, what was my basis such that I would treat the similarly situated, applicant, resident issue in the future the same way, and kind of gone through. And I also was kind of an experimentation too, because I was always I stuck by my principles. It's just kind of the way I am and the way I was. And that isn't always, developers and others don't always appreciate that like you think they should. And so it was always an experiment to see, could I be my own person? Could I vote my conscience consistently and still be able to do the job, still get reelected and things of that nature, and not have everybody come after me and try to kill me? And ultimately, it did work for me. I think I was respected by all. I was always straightforward. I think that was the other thing I learned, is that if you're honest with everybody, if you tell them what your position is, you don't kind of hide the ball.
Right.
You let them know exactly what they're facing when they come in front of you, whether it be a resident or any constituent or a developer. I think they respect you for that. At least they can then plan their strategy, right?
Right.
And so it worked for me. But yeah, that was kind of my approach. I was just be me, just be me, not try to be somebody else, and vote my conscience.
Before you got into politics, you were already practicing law?
Yes.
What type of law were you practicing?
So I did a wide range of law. My primary area, though, was family law. So I did family law, I did contracts, I did general litigation, and estate planning as well. But I think family law was probably my largest portion of my practice, just because it seemed like that's the most business that would come in. But I can tell you, it wore on me, right? It really wore on me, carrying around everyone else's kind of emotional strain and stress. And then I had some cases where I did my job really, really well, and there was kids involved, right? And so my client ended up with the kids, and I didn't think my client really should have had the kids.
Right.
And that just weighed, my type of personality, that just it weighed on me. I wasn't happy about that. So that's what led me to start looking into, maybe I want to do something a little bit different.
So when you got out of college with your law degree, did you go work for a big firm? And when did you transition into your own practice?
I did. So actually, I worked for a local guy here in Homestead. He had a practice. He did family law and criminal, which is, again, one reason why family law kind of became the knack for me. But he was a small-time practice, one-time operator. So I was going to get out of law school, graduate, and then go kind of with him and help build this practice up here in the Homestead area. And that plan kind of went sideways in a hurry. So I passed the bar. I think I got my results in September of 2005. By Martin Luther King Day in January of 2006, he got ill, never came back to the office. And so ultimately, I ended up having to run the entire firm at that point. And so I decided, hey, let's do it myself. Go ahead and launch my own firm. But it was a learning curve, right? I mean, launching a practice, fresh out of law school, learning to practice the law, how to run a business. I mean, it was a crash course.
Right. So tell us, what is fun for you?
Fun for me?
In this day and age.
So for me, it's kind of getting away from all the craziness, right? It's finding peace in the nature and the outdoors. So photography was a big thing that I've been involved in. I love to go fishing. Fishing is probably my biggest stress relief that I like to get out there and do. It's
catch and release or catch and eat?
Catch and release. Don't get me wrong. I like to eat fish, and I will eat my share of fish. But for the most part, for me, it's catch and release. Let them go, catch them again another day.
Right.
That's kind of my thing. But that's what I do for fun. That's what I do to kind of get away and enjoy and decompress.
Now, when we talk about back the farm share, I mean, that's a big, I guess we would call it, right?
After he took the helm, I mean, it was doing great prior,
right?
But I think your leadership took it to another
another level.
We did. We've quadrupled in size since I took over operations at FarmShare. And so a lot of people don't realize, they think of FarmShare as kind of, oh, it's that little place out there near Homestead Miami Speedway. And really it's a statewide organization. I've got 8 warehouses across the state of Florida. I've got 2 in Miami-Dade, 2 in Broward, Palm Beach County, Jacksonville, Duval County, and then over there near Tallahassee. And we've got a fleet of nearly 55 semi-trucks and box trucks that are on the road constantly picking up food, distributing food. I've got almost 100 employees. So it's grown by leaps and bounds since I took over back in 2016. And it helps millions of people. I mean, we move over 100 million pounds of food annually. It's a large volume of product that's coming in and out and managing that. So it's a big operation.
So where do you see it in the next 3 to 4 years? My
goal is to continue to kind of expand. We kind of went through a phase where we expanded so rapidly that I realized, hey, we've got to pull it back in here, right? We're gonna implode because we grow too fast, and so that's kind of what we've done the last year or two, is kind of reset, kind of level off, and now we're kind of getting ready to make that next push forward and try to grow again. I'm looking to maybe expand over into the Tampa Bay area. It's an area we don't have a warehouse. We've been serving remotely by trucks. I'm looking to launch some new programs, some more creative programs that are going to help, maybe move more food and distribute more food, as well as helping local farmers. So we've got some expansion opportunities and some ideas. So I'm looking to kind of make that push forward again here in the next year to 3 years.
So Steve, at its core, for our audience that may not know what FarmShare is and what its mission is, can you explain to us what it does, how it gets funded, and how people, see these trucks driving around the state of Florida?
So FarmShare was founded on this idea of capturing underutilized fruits and vegetables. So these are the blemish. They're too big, too small for the grocery store packaging. So they weren't going to market. And back in 1991, which is when we were founded more than 30 years ago, that product was going directly back to the landfill. And so the idea the founder came up with is, why couldn't we take that product and make it available to hungry people free of charge? And that was the genesis of FarmShare way back when. And since then, obviously, we've grown to this statewide organization. We're the largest independent food bank in the state of Florida, 3rd largest independent food bank in the United States. Wow. And so what we do is we go out both working with the farmers to collect these healthy fruits and vegetables, but also Publix, the ports, wholesalers, retailers. They have excess product that they can't move, or that they receive but they can't move to market because the market's changed on them. And so they're donating it to us. We're then putting them to our warehouses, repackaging it back out, and it's going both directly to the end consumer through our community food distribution events, which is what most people know FarmShare about. It's what makes the paper, it's what gets all the attention. But 90% of our food is actually going out through what are considered partner agencies of ours. And so those are your local soup kitchens, food pantries, church organizations that are directly embedded in the communities. They're coming to us. We're kind of that hub and that food distribution wheel, or that food banking wheel. They're getting that food from us and then ultimately going and distributing it into those communities. And that keeps that food flowing for those that are hungry and in need and don't have access to food otherwise.
Does FarmShare have an app? Is it because it seemed like it's such a big hub, and I haven't really.
Seems like there's a good system.
Yeah, they need an app, or they get a one-stop shop on an app.
So it's funny you say that. So we actually are in the process of launching an app. We developed one about a year and a half ago. Okay. And so it's so that you as the recipient can find our food distributions, you download the information. So some of the programs, we also are part of a federal program that requires certain collection of information, documentation, et cetera. Right. And so that app accomplishes all that as well. You can fill that all out once versus having to fill it out each time you go to one of the food distribution events. It also helps the agencies then track the people that are coming through. And they don't track them in terms of who they are. There's not that identifying information, but it helps us know how many people got food, what kind of food they got, how many households they had, what was the reason for their qualification. Was it based on, other government programmings, other things of that nature? And so all that, yes, is in an app. We're launching that now,
breaking news.
Yeah. So that's kind of being launched. We did it here in Miami-Dade County first and foremost, and then we're kind of going to the rest of our places. Like anything changed. So there's a little bit of resistance there because it's been doing different now, right? No one likes technology sometimes, but yeah, that is we are in the process of launching that, which is helping streamline our processes very well.
When certain things come to mind, you hear, okay, what can you do different? Do you see you guys expanding beyond Florida?
I don't right now. No, right now Florida is our base. We don't look. We've been approached by Georgia and some other states to kind of implement what we're doing here. We've had some discussions, but ultimately. I still think we have expansion, and we still have nooks and crannies to fill here in Florida before I consider trying to expand that outside of
Take care of your own backyard.
Exactly, yeah, 100%.
Well said.
So the people that maybe thinking about getting into this business, because you've got some competitors, right? We're the third largest in the country,
Right.
Right.
So you guys are kind of like a monopoly in a way, because you've created systems that make it easy for the food distribution to get out through the state. So if somebody's thinking about maybe getting into the business, would you just say stay out of Florida because you've got the-
This is
Of
his
course,
house.
yeah, they can come join our team. Feel free to
That's
reach
it,
out,
that's
and
it.
we got job openings.
They
But
say better together.
yeah, I would say that there's enough need out there. There's enough food out there that it's not bad to have other networks and resources. But what happens is when you have multiple kind of leads, right? It starts to splinter off that food distribution network, and then you have waste of food products because it's being redirected, or one group doesn't have access, and so I think it's better to have some uniformity there, and that's where feel free to come in, start a food pantry, help us distribute that food, but work in conjunction with Farm Share and the other large scale food banks that have been established for a long period of time to accomplish that goal.
So do you see that we're going into storm season, right? Does that seem to be stressful for you guys now? Or, because the farmers, everybody seem to wake up around, June-ish and says, hey.
Yeah, so from a donation perspective, most of our product, most of the farming that's done here in Florida, South Florida specifically, is usually from, say, October through about May, give or take. And so that's when we're getting a lot of the local donations. Once you get into the summertime, most of it moves up to Georgia, even up to New York. And we are bringing some of that food back into the state. But for summertime, when you talk about storm season, so our blue skies is what we're talking about. It's feeding people, right? But we do disaster relief as well. So during hurricanes, we're responding. Natural disasters, we're responding. Usually we focus on that first 10 days after, say, a storm makes landfall. We're moving our trucks, we're moving that food. Typically move around 2 to 3 million pounds of food to those hardest hit areas during that time period. And so disaster relief is a big part of what we do. It wears our staff out when we have a storm, because we'll run 2 weeks straight with no stops, no breaks, almost 24-hour day operations to move that food around. So it is something that we prepare for. Luckily last year we didn't have any storms. Hopefully this year we don't have any storms again. It was nice to have that year off, because the year prior was pretty intense.
Yeah. So Farm Share, do you see it being, obviously, first responder?
Yes.
Are you guys under the umbrella of that? And do you know what the first responder program currently is? I guess even with AT&T, they have a first responders program, and they go forward and they have the agreement that anything happens, you guys have service available to you. Is that something that you guys have in place already, as far as, or just after the storm they reach out to you or the organization for support?
We're embedded in the EOC with the state of Florida, so we actually have someone that can go up there and sit in that EOC when all this is happening. We're on the conference calls on a daily or multi-time stated basis once a storm is identified or makes landfall. So we're kind of embedded. They also provided some resources, so we have extra access to food, diapers, water, things of that nature, in addition to what we already have stockpiled for those types of storms. And we're constantly coordinating with all of those different operations. Where does the food need to be dropped? How does it need to be distributed? So we're kind of a part of that entire system for the state of Florida at each county level, but also at the state level.
Cool.
Steve, you have nearly 100 employees, right? And it's a big operation. There's trucks, there's a lot of capital involved in a nonprofit.
Right.
Where does the funding come from?
So the funding comes from multiple sources. Our primary source of funding is our partnership we have with the state of Florida. And so we just had the legislative process this year. I'd spent a lot of time up there. Every year I'm up there, advocating for the dollars that we need to make sure that we can keep our mission going and keep the organization moving in the right direction. For us, it's a struggle every year, because we don't have what we call recurring funding, meaning that it's in the budget. It just kind of rolls over. You got to make sure it doesn't go away. Our funding starts at zero every year. So I walk in the door whenever that legislative session starts, and I've got a big goose egg sitting in my line item, right? I've got $0, but I've got to run an organization that requires millions of dollars to run, and I have to fight the entire session to get us to where we need to get to make sure that we have the funding to run those trucks, to put fuel in those trucks, to run the refrigeration, to pay the rent, to pay the employees, to acquire that food and distribute that food. So the state of Florida is our biggest partner that we have. Secondarily, we have some federal programs that we work with as well, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. What that program does is they buy excess products. It's kind of a price support system for the farming community in the entire United States. They buy product that maybe isn't moving as much or that has fallen below that bare minimum price, and then they make that food available to food banks like us to then distribute out. So there's some funding that comes with that, as well as food resources, and then private donations. So you've got your private funders, whether it be individuals or corporations or foundations, are providing that supplemental dollars as well. So it's a multi-pronged approach. The idea is not to have all your eggs in one basket, because we had some drops in funding last year. To be a perfect example, we lost over probably $2.5 million in funding, and it affected operations. We had to scale back. We had to lay off people. We had to cut warehouses. So it's an ebb and flow, but it's the nature of the not-for-profit world.
Well, this message is for Mackenzie Bezos. If you're watching, please
reach out.
Funnel some of those funds to FarmShare.
Right.
And Steve, the funds come from the state. The largest amount come from the state of Florida, and you would think that food is should be the highest priority. We don't want people to
should be automatic, right?
So, what takes priority over food? I know there's a lot of things that the state of Florida needs to run, but as you're walking in the door, I would think it's an easy sell to say, hey, we don't want anybody going hungry in this state. Right. But then you get the pushback.
Right. It is, there's a lot of competing interests, whether it be the local level or the state level. I mean, you've got the same type of dynamic that plays out, and you've got to go out there, you've got to be that squeaky wheel, and you've got to remind them what you do, why you do it, what the benefits are for what you're doing, how. If you can keep people fed, you can keep them out of emergency rooms. You can keep them out of the hot doctor's offices. You can decrease Medicare costs. You can, increase productivity, right? The workers work better, and so that makes more productivity. It generates more money for the owners, the business owners, and then it trickles down through the community. If you've got kids, they need food and nutrition, right? If you have kids that aren't getting the food and nutrition, they're not learning, so they're not becoming productive members of society, or that requires more monies invested to help them get out of the hole that maybe get dug. So, those are kind of your selling points that you're talking to them, and they understand it and they get it, but you got to remind them. You got to remind them that it's not just, hey, somebody needs food, you're giving them food, which on its face is also very important, but it's all the ramifications that come by not providing that food, to the communities and to the state of Florida and those residents that need it. And one thing we found since, COVID and the inflation that came from COVID is that, there's a lot of blue collar workers that are in need of help. I mean, we have a ton, more than I've seen since I've been working there for 10 years now, that are coming through our lines, that are going and utilizing our services because, even though they have a job and sometimes multiple jobs, they just can't make ends meet. They've got to make choices. Do they buy food? Do they pay for medicine? Do they put fuel in their car? Do they pay their rent? Right. And so those are all things too that, you've got to kind of educate the decision makers on, to realize that, this is now affecting, food insecurity is now affecting a wide population of Floridians. Right. And it's, and they get it and they see it and they're appreciative and they've been very good to us and been great partners over the years. But, every year you got to remind them.
100%. In the perfect world, you think they would have an automatic system or a grant written just for the...
That's what we've been pushing for a while. At the state level, they've been trying to get away from what they call recurring, revenue generating or revenue sources or expenses, and they've been trying to put everything kind of as one-time funding deal. But we have been working toward that. We're hoping to maybe get there one day where, we go in there and it's automatically, hey, X number of dollars is allocated for food issues or for FarmShare specifically. And what that does and what that would allow me to do is, try anybody that runs a business, trying to run a business from year to year with a zero budget, knowing that next year I start with zero, so I can never really plan ahead, which makes it hard to invest and makes it hard to expand because you never know exactly what that budget's going to look like, which makes things difficult. If I had at least a base budget to work from, then I would be able to make those expansion plans. I would be able to take out loans. I would be able to finance things, because I know that I have a revenue stream. Right. Where right now it's really year to year. And it's
reset.
Tough. Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Being the leader, the CEO, with all the moving parts, obviously you can't do it by yourself. You've got to have a great team of people. Now, people that are employees, what sets some of them apart from others, and are you competitive with what you pay employees compared to other industries?
We try to be as competitive as we can. I mean, is a not-for-profit company ever going to be as competitive as a for-profit company? It's just not going to happen. I mean, I'm not making monies. I can't pass on revenues to my employees. I can't, so I have to work within the realm of what I work from. And also because of the volatility I talked about earlier about our funding mechanisms and from year to year, not knowing what that looks like, you have to kind of set a number that you can kind of keep everybody in that boat, right? So in the event that you have a huge drop in revenue, you've got to be able to have a sustainable level where I can keep the majority of my employees still employed because they're family, right? And that's the benefit, I think, of being a not-for-profit employee is typically it's more of a family-oriented atmosphere versus, hey, I've got to make profits, I've got to turn dividends, I've got to make shareholders happy. That's not what it's about. It's mission-driven. And so my employees are looking at And I'm focused on when I hire employees, those who are driven by the mission more so than the other extraneous aspect. But in the meantime, I'm trying to reward them, right? If I have the monies available, I'm going to pay them well. And a lot of times for us, it's it may be it's extra benefits. Maybe it's more time off. It's quality of life. So we try to figure out a way to balance that idea of saying, hey, yeah, you could go work for a for-profit company and make more salary, but we're going to have a better work balance for you, work-family balance for you.
In the perfect world, do you see that becoming an option where you find most people prefer to do it that way, or in the farm shares world, you're non-for-profit? Do you ever see that being switched
to be for-profit?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. I mean, our model has always been being able to provide that food free of charge, and I think that there's some nuances. Don't get me wrong. There's some creative programs that I'm working on that have some sort of a hybrid mechanism that help generate some maybe reoccurring revenue streams for farm share, but not in a for-profit scenario, more in a sustainability, financial sustainability scenario. But I think we'll always be a not-for-profit, and I think it sets up well for us. Again, it's just that mission-oriented. The reward that you get from being able to provide somebody a meal or food that they wouldn't otherwise have, seeing that gratefulness on their face, there's something about that you can't get through other means.
I think that there's a misconception out there that people think, okay, non-for-profit, obviously they've got to pay their employees, and they've got to pay all of the other expenses of that company that needs to be paid. Now, if you're scaling and you're expanding and you're doing an excellent job, I think everybody deserves a raise, because that's what the mission is for. And if there is funding that becomes on a recurring basis and there is room for bonuses or anything like that, but what happens is CEOs and people get bonuses, all of a sudden they go, oh, they're eating off taxpayers or whatever that is. So there's a fine line that you've got to tread there, so that people don't start thinking that it's a bad thing.
Correct. No, you're correct, and that is part of that balance as well that you've got to figure out from a management perspective, is that you need to recruit and retain quality staff, because that's the only way you're going to be a quality organization, not for profit or for profit, regardless of either one. And so there is that. Have that balance of being able to hire, because again, one of the reasons we're being so successful is I've created a great management team. I have a great team that helps support what I do and my vision and what the organization is trying to accomplish. But I can't do that for free. No one's going to come in and work for me for free. So you're right. There's that balance of trying to figure out how to accomplish that. We've done a pretty good job of navigating it and keeping our employees happy and keeping them, making wages that are in line for them to be able to do well. But also being good stewards of those dollars that are being provided to us, whether it be government dollars or whether it be private dollars. They also want you to answer for, well, what are you doing with your dollars? And so the good thing for us is we have, I think, if you take into account all of our operational dollars and operational expenses, our admin costs, which is kind of that number they look at, is very, very low for not-for-profits. I mean, I think we're like 6% or less of our funding goes to any type of admin-related items, and that's extremely low in the not-for-profit world.
Well, someone that we've got in common, one of our Rotarian members, Dennis Maytan, extremely,
shout out to Dennis.
highly of your leadership, and he says that organization would not be where it's at had it not been for what you've brought to the table. And Dennis says that he enjoys going to work every day. He actually, it doesn't feel like work to him. So big shout out to Dennis Maytan. Thank you for.
We'll see you in a minute. Very good.
Yeah, no, Dennis has been a huge part of our organization. I'm lucky to be able to recruit him and get him to come to work for us, and he's taken a big load off of me from an operational perspective. I was traveling at one time. We'd opened up a new facility in Jacksonville when I first started with Farm Share, and I was probably going up there 2 or 3 times a month. To run and organize and get it up and where I wanted to go. Now he's doing all that for me, which is great. I'm sitting at home, I'm hanging out with my family, and I've got him on the road handling all these issues when they come up.
So how often do you guys hire new employees? It depends on the cycle or the year for funding?
The idea here is I've kept most of my family together for as long as possible. So it's not like we're letting people off and hiring. This last year was an anomaly, but normally it's not that case. And so we just hire as needed. Obviously there's turnover in every organization. People leave, and so we'll hire to replace, if we have an expansion opportunity. So we expanded a huge amount, probably 4 years ago. We got some additional contracts with the federal government for some additional counties that we hadn't fully operated in before. And we had to set up, essentially 2 brand new warehouses. And so there was a lot of hiring that went on in that process. But generally, it's pretty level. Our goal is if we're keeping things level, minus any expansion things that we're focused on, that's a good thing, both from a continuity, training perspective, cost perspective. Yeah.
So when people want to have a food distribution, they've got to follow certain protocol. They don't just say, hey, I want FarmShare to be here tomorrow. What is, for the audience, what is that system or process in place for a food distribution?
So we like I said, 10% of what we do is we're partnering with community leaders, government agencies, other not-for-profit organizations, church organizations to have these standalone, what we call community food distribution events. Those that are interested in having one in your community, and they're focused again on areas that maybe not have an agency that's already serving it, so it's considered a food desert type area. So you would contact FarmShare. We have a person that manages our calendar. She would ask kind of, hey, what's your time period? What's your dates? We'll figure out when we have some free time, on our calendar to plug in a new event. And then she starts working with you through the process. And so she says, okay, we need a location. You got to help us find a location. Do you have volunteers? We have kind of this cheat sheet where we walk you through everything that's needed. Tables, chairs, tents. We help you create the flyer. We help you promote it. And then obviously, most importantly, we deliver the food and help administer and run that that event on site. But there's a whole lot of check boxes to get before you get to that finish line to make sure that it's a good event for us, it's a good event for you, the host, or you, the person that's partnering with FarmShare for this event, and obviously, most importantly, that it's easily accessible and it runs smoothly for the recipients that are there to get their life-sustaining food.
Very good.
You are a blessing to the community and the state, my friend.
I tell you, we truly appreciate you coming on and sharing some of the insights of how the operations of FarmShare and personal as well. But is there anything that you would like to leave with our audience today?
No, I just appreciate you guys giving me a venue here to talk a little bit about the organization and, give me a chance to maybe open up and talk a little bit to the community itself. It's always good for them to learn about, a little bit more about who I am, behind the scenes. So I appreciate that opportunity as well.
We would like your help, Steve, with getting some of the farmers to come on, because there's a lot of big farmers here in the city of Homestead, and I know you've got relationships with them, and we've invited them, and we just want them to be here and tell us a little bit about the ag, industry and how it's going through some of its transition. And maybe you can put a plug for us.
I'll be happy to reach out to some of our great partners and see if they might be willing to come on the show. Farmers by nature are private. They usually like to stay out of the limelight. So it may be like pulling teeth. And you got the struggle here where a lot of the farmers, unfortunately, are kind of closing up shop here in the city of Homestead, which again is something to be talked about and something to be advocated for to kind of keep that from happening. Making sure the regulations stay positive and favorable for them to continue their operations. So all of that would be helpful for them to come and tell you, and you guys to tell your audience to make sure that they have advocates out there that are helping them.
Well, we will definitely like to be their plug. I mean, we created this podcast organically just to try to bring attention and leave crumb for the next generation coming up. So we see them, we try to bring them on, and they say, hey, wait, first we let them know out of the gate. This is not a political show. This is not no one trying to jam anyone up. This is simply to leave crumbs for the next generation, because a lot of them, most of the time, persons do something other is because they don't want to share the knowledge. We're just trying to share the knowledge, and leave the crumbs.
Your family, 5 generations in,
right?
Family, right?
Wow, I didn't know that.
There's a lot of stories to be told there, so that we could all learn, and then we can plan for the next generation.
We see that now, 5 generations in. Someone had to leave those crumbs.
Yeah, correct.
And here we are.
Yep.
So once again, thank you. If they wanted to reach out to FarmShare, is there any plug other than just that? Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, so the easiest way is go to the website, farmshare.org. From there, you can find the contact information from anywhere that you need to access in terms of, are you trying to set up an event? Do you have a question about a distribution? Do you want to become an agency? Do you want to volunteer? There's a multitude of ways there. The website I recommend is the best place to start from. And then from there, you can contact someone personally to get any very specific information you might need. And again, that's farmshare.org.
Perfect.
There you go. Talk Visual 305, bringing you exclusive interviews with some really great people. Please do us a favor, like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much.
We're out.